Welcome to October Gallery and to this exhibition of prints, a preview really of a body of work by Anatsui. I particularly would like to welcome Mike Ward, one of the master printers of Factum Arte, and Constanza Dessain, both hiding in the crowd, but soon to come forward to talk to you. I became aware of a place called Factum Arte in Madrid some years ago. Factum Arte is run by Adam Lowe, who, interestingly enough, went to the Royal College with me at the same time, but I didn't know that. So Factum Arte is a place where artists' dreams, however grand and crazy they are, can become true. It's a real dream factory. It's a huge building on the outskirts of Madrid where the most extraordinary things take place. So as I knew that, and at that time, about 2 years ago, Anatsui was in Spain, and I said to him, why did you come and join me and we go to Madrid and visit Factum Arte? I want to introduce you to all these new possibilities that might enter your body of work. So we got together and we visited together with Adam Lowe all the places in Factum Arte, the different studios, the ateliers, the huge sculptures they were building, the 3D scanning facilities, etc., etc. And as we were having lunch, the conversation turned to the tabletops that Anatsui had in his studio. The tabletops that had been pierced by his assistants when they were making holes into the bottle tops that usually get strung together to make his bottle top works. So these tabletops have a very long history, therefore. You know, over many years, you see assistants piercing into that wood. And Adam thought, well, wouldn't that be a grand idea to bring that to Madrid and to work with it? And after some months, these tabletops arrived in Madrid, and they got to the hands of the wonderful printers, Mike and Constanza, and they worked with them. The second time I was in Madrid, I visited with Elle. A body of work had already been produced. Well, I would say a body of work. I went into a studio which is about 6, 7, 8 times the size of this, and it was filled with prints. It was really quite extraordinary. I was with people who loved printmaking so dearly that every tabletop had been printed about multiple times in different ways, different possibilities. It was quite wonderful, and Elle was there, and we looked at those different variations just to gain an oversight over them. And I think it was at this time that we started discussing and thinking of the Eclipse suite that's behind me. Another visit followed about half a year later. This was last November. And again, we went to a different studio filled with different prints. And at that time, you know, it was this big cassava grater print that came to our attention, and wood collages, etc., etc. So this is just a small preview. It's a capsule of all the extraordinary work that has been produced around the tabletops and around his bottle top works. And it's a body that continues to expand. And the person who is particularly in charge of this expansion, I want to introduce you to Mike Ward from Factum Arte, who is going to speak to you about working with the bottle tops, with the tabletops, with many different aspects and now. Thank you.
Well, I mean, first of all, thank you, Elisabeth, for introducing us to Elle. I mean, it's been an astonishingly enjoyable project to be involved in. Not least because it's been like going back to art school, which is, if only I could do that, turn a switch and be back at art school would be marvellous, But it's been an astonishingly thorough project because of the enjoyment that Elle and Elisabeth have had from it as well. They've always been appreciative of the efforts. They've always been cognizant of the fact that permutation in its multitudinous facets is a good thing, rather than necessarily immediately focusing in on any one particular way of doing anything. And there is no one particular way of doing anything at all, I find, in life at all. But in printmaking, once given a kind of, I nearly said benchmark, but I've said it, yeah. Once given a benchmark, from that you can lift off and play and make mistakes and make utter disastrous mishaps happen, all of which in the end are constructive and useful to the production of a series of work like this. And it is true to say that this really is the tip of the iceberg. There's a heck of a lot of other finished and signed and approved works by Elle that exist, but hopefully you'll get to see those in the grander scheme of things later on. But what was astonishing about being involved in this was the circle that it's made. I mean, Elle's initial interest in making the colossal and magnificent and beautiful sculptural drapes that he makes, some of which are the size of the sides of half a street, you know, colossal. Some of which are more like the size of that. That's a tiddler, really. That one there, like 2.5 meters by 2 meters, is a little one for Elle. But within that scale of thing, within those the making of those works, the amount of labour is astonishing, and the amount of repetitive labour is astonishing, and it is that labour that is being recycled. So not only does he recycle pieces of old aluminium that nobody else is interested in, old obituary plates that is about somebody's passing, being used in his sculptures. They've also been used in some of these prints because they're folded over aluminium lithographic plates, bottle tops, also aluminium. Not only is he recycling bits and bobs of stuff that people walk past in the street, he's recycling the labour that went into making those astonishing pieces. And so we have this fantastic circle that's gone on, you know. And it would be a cliche to say that these eclipses, circular as well, are anything to do with that. They're not. That was the eclipse series came from a randomness that was happening in the studio, as Elisabeth mentioned earlier, whereby we had lots and lots and lots of sort of visual ammunition, basically, scattered about. Some of it happened in this very room. We had a session in this very room where Elle was literally throwing things out like he was dealing cards and deciding on the enjoyment of where things landed and perhaps readjusting a little bit, but not that much really. I mean, pretty much letting randomness come into it. And they would then be photographed from above like this and then pieced together in the studio in the grid as pieces. We don't have any of those hanging here at the moment, but you'll see them in the fullness of time. But the circularity of the project is sort of reflected in these eclipses, in the sense that they were also randomly, the first 3 or 4 were randomly produced by just sort of scudding things around on the floor and thinking, oh, they look kind of, yeah, that's starting to work. Let's try a different colour, because we had ammunition, a pile of ammunition. Oh, let's try that colour next to that colour. Let's try that over that. And it was very much I wouldn't even say organised random. It was just random, really, wasn't it? And that's what's produced the excitement in these works. And I don't know if Constanza wants to say anything, does she? Because she's been very much involved in. Come on, Constanza. Constanza's a fabulous printmaker and artist in her own right, and she's probably got stuff to say. And I think you should.
Well, I think Mike said it very beautifully.
Excuse me, stand nearer to the mic, please.
I think Mike has encapsulated the project beautifully, and it was this kind of playful response that Elle had, like his excitement when he first came into the print studio and he saw a piece of paper go through the press and come out the other side with this kind of trace of his work on it. It was a very exciting few days, the first few days we spent together. And then as we got these piles of ammunition, as Mike said, it was just amazing seeing Elle work. I think very much as an artist who works with found materials, to kind of bring these composite pieces together, as opposed to it being this kind of, right, linear, this is the idea, how do we achieve it? It felt very organic and kind of joyful as a making process.
The initiation technically is very interesting. It's very much to do with the fact that it's Factum Arte that produced them. Is the procedure of going from the piece of wood that you might all have seen around the other side of that pillar there, which is one of the actual benches that were used to do all these stabbings. And then this side of the pillar being the plate that was around it. Once all it's had to do is go through one procedure to get to that plate, and thereafter anything can happen. You know, the technicality, the sort of boffin, geeky, how to say that? Technical side of it was absolutely wonderful and marvellous and very unique to Factum. But once it came into the hands of the Intaglio studio with Constanza and myself, it then becomes a printmaking playground. You can do anything once you've got that established. So it's very untech art there, very very analog, very mucky fingers, very, you know, not very good for dinner party fingernails, you know, and all that kind of thing. And using real paper, very, you know, and real material, very good inks, and just generally it's smelling like a print area rather than pressing a button and producing an image. You know, it became art. You know, and I don't know. I think I've probably waffled on enough now.
Thank you.
I've just been reminded that my colleague Gerard Holden and myself will be in conversation with Mike Ward on Saturday to discuss the prints further. This will be taking place at 3 o'clock here at the gallery. Thank you.